welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here today on this glorious March afternoon in the sugar bush. My name is Martin Tamlyn. I manage the Old Growth Forest Project at the Ignatius Jesuit Centre in Guelph. And as part of our Holistic Restoration series of videos, today we're going to take a look at something that's very culturally significant to this part of the world, is maple syrup production. So I'm really grateful to be here with Sarina and Dave Skene of White Owl Native Ancestry in Kitchener to talk about what it means to be out here and to be in relationship with the land and kind of the gift of maple syrup.
Hi, my name's Dave Skene, and I work for White Owl Native Ancestry here in the Waterloo region, and I'm Métis, and I'm part of the Grand River Métis community here. I want to welcome you to this land. This land is owned by White Owl Native Ancestry, and there's a bit of a history that goes with our ownership of this land. So about 5 years ago, we were speaking at a United Church. Michelle, who's one of the executive directors of White Owl, was speaking at a United Church here in Waterloo, and in the process found out that this land existed, and it was owned by that particular United Church. And in a conversation, the United Church basically just offered us this land for ownership. The land got protected because of a very rare salamander called the Jefferson salamander, which still lives in this area. We don't do a lot on the land just because of the salamander. We want to continue to protect the salamander. But one thing we do is we're harvesting maple syrup. And so here, we're here in the spring every year for the last 4 years, tapping trees and boiling the sap down to make delicious maple syrup. So we want to invite you to come with us, and we'll just show you the whole process that we go through to create maple syrup here in this tree lot. Just recently I was reading an article of how important maple syrup was in this area, and I was really surprised because it was a significant part of community, and it was the indigenous people that were here produced a lot of maple syrup, sugar. They would have done mostly sugar, and some syrup. I thought, well, this is like a great place to begin to share community around maple syrup. So for us as Métis people, and this is kind of a part of our spring festivals and early season celebrations, but also this is a part of our calendar. So this is called the sugar moon, which is probably different now than it was back then because of global warming. Now we kind of tap in February. We might even start boiling in February, where before the sugar moon would have been more like March, April, and now it's more February, March. So it still is, for us, a significant part of community, celebration of spring and new life, and starting a new year in a sense.
And it's also the season, and sap itself brings kind of everything that your body is needing after a hard, cold winter. And that's why it's the sugar moon is so kind of all of the themes of rejuvenation and kind of like waking up after a slumber comes around in the springtime, because the trees are bringing the sap, which has all of the kind of essential things that you were lacking in the wintertime. So minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and potassium are brought up from the kind of the hydraulic system in the maple tree, and then your body can take that in through the sap, or you can boil it down for maple syrup or to maple sugar, and so it's like a perfect timing kind of cycle journey that the universe kind of provides for us when we're just needing it mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally after a hard winter.
I see it as kind of an invitation as well, because with the sugaring process and the maple tree itself dictates when you need to attend to it. Right? You don't know when the temperature is that first time is going to be above freezing, which is a celebration in itself with the long winters we have here, which I've discovered in the last 20 years, for sure. So but because of the attention it needs and the work it needs, the invitation is like you're called to be outside. You're called to be in a space like this, and commune with it, and to be witness to the changes and the things that are happening, and the chatterings of the squirrels. Or there was a red-tailed hawk in a tree up here we were visiting the other day, because you could see the chipmunks just scurrying across and the hawk watching them. So that kind of brings us out. I think what's nice, the way that you both talk about it as well, is not seeing syrup as a material thing, right? I think there's a lot of recognition more, in the seasons and the cycle and the celebration. There's a recognition, by how much work it is when you're doing it on an open fire system, for sure. This is a very precious commodity, isn't it? But I like that you said the community aspects of it. Now, one of the things you talked about, Dave, which was very interesting, is because it does bring people out. It forces people to sit around the fire and talk and converse and share stories, which is just beautiful in itself. But you even spoke about the trees as being community themselves. I mean, this is a really beautiful, mature woodlot with beeches and maples and white pines. Like, you don't get to see trees of this size in many places. It's so beautiful. But the sugar, the maple tree has a community in itself, in far as an indigenous kind of teachings, right?
I think the easiest way to say it is that there's no separation between spiritual and our physical activity. We do kind of a ceremony to ask the maple trees to welcome us into their community, so that we're a part of this particular forest community, and specifically because we're harvesting from the maple tree, that we ask permission from the maples to come in and then to harvest, and then along with that, just the simple practice is the idea of celebration community. And so all those things, they're not separated into little parcels, but all those things go together as we're out here in the bush and harvesting. And the idea of hard work too is significant, because we actually, the Anishinaabe people, have a story of why this is hard work. So there's an acknowledgement that like part of being part of harvesting the sap is that we work hard.
The story begins one day when Nanabush decided that he wanted to check on the Anishinaabe people, and so he came to this region and was walking around in a village and noticed that there was nobody tending the fields, and nobody chopping wood or looking after the animals, and he questioned where everybody was, and went searching for everybody to find them laying in a grove of maple trees, with their mouths wide open, drinking the straight maple syrup that was coming out of the trees, because at that time maple syrup came readily available right from maple trees. And this did not please Nanabush, and he knew it would not please Creator. And so Nanabush collected a bunch of water in a birch basket from a nearby lake, and he carried it over to the tops of the maple trees and began pouring it into the maple trees to dilute the maple syrup. Not enough that it was pure water coming out of the trees, but enough so that there was just a little bit of sweetness to it, which is why we call sap sweet water also. And he did this as a lesson, to tell the Anishinaabe people that in order to get and in order to receive the gift of maple syrup and the sweetness that comes every spring, that you would have to to put in a lot of work in order to do that. And so he said that you'll have to chop a lot of wood in order to start many fires to boil down the sap into syrup, and kind of work for many hours in order to get a small amount of syrup. And also that this would only happen at a certain time of year, between a few weeks in the spring. And so what was normally maple syrup became maple sap, and we are reminded of this story at this time of year, especially when we're hauling all of our buckets back from way back in the back of the sugar bush here, and we're chopping wood. We are reminded of this story because we know that we must work for the gifts of creation in order to receive their sweetness. Otherwise, we're not upholding our responsibility to the land or the respect that it deserves.
While I was sat here listening to Sarina's story, you can hear the birds, I can feel the sun on my face. I was sat next to this bucket. That movement that happens in spring of the melting of the snows and the movement of the streams and the rivers, I can hear the dripping of this maple syrup bucket here, drip, 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 and it's just the pace of it and the echo of it in the forest just reminded me of like the heartbeat of the land that kind of lives through the trees.
So a really important aspect of the sugaring season is that we function and we make the maple syrup based on what the trees tell us what to do, and this kind of lets us know and leads to us acknowledging that the trees are autonomous beings, in that they decide what they output for us to make into maple syrup, and so this kind of points to us respecting all of our relations and recognizing that we're not the only important people in this process, but that there are so much more things kind of incorporated into the maple syrup making process.
I just want to walk you a bit through the process that we go through here to actually go from sap to maple syrup. So this is our boiling pan and our arch. And so so what we do is the heat is in the arch, and then the pan holds the sap, and is designed so we would pour in the sap into this end. It's designed that as the water evaporates off the sap and becomes heavy, the gravity actually pulls it down towards the other end of the arch, and then at the other end you have your thickest. It's not quite syrup yet, but you have the thickest process here. So it just is traveling through. You can see these little sections, and so the sap, it's traveling through these, and as you can see, it gets darker and darker and foamier and darker and darker. So then, once we've boiled as much as once we've kind of come to a significantly darker sap here, it's quite sugary, but it's not quite syrup yet. So we have this, what we call the finisher over here. We bring it here, we tap it off, we run sap through and push the heavier sugary sap out into the finisher. Then we take it over here, and then we use propane tanks for this just to be able to control it a little bit more. And then this is our finisher. So we have this as a pan. You can see that we have we're partially through a finishing process within this pan. We had to turn it off so the sound wasn't as noisy, but it'll take about an hour to an hour and a half in the finisher before it becomes syrup. We don't use any of the Our way of deciding its syrup is not like through modern measuring skills. It's basically we eye it, we feel it, and we taste it. And when we feel like it's the right look, the right feel, and the right taste, then we call it maple syrup. And that's the process. So from our perspective, from Métis and First Nations, offering Thanksgiving or acting in a reciprocal way with the land around us is really, really important. And one of the ways we do that is by offering Thanksgiving with tobacco. And so we offer that with to the maple tree before we tap or before the season starts as well. And just say to the tree that we're thankful for all that it offers us. And in so doing, we're in offering a gift of tobacco, it's the whole process of reciprocity that's really important to us. The continual journey of giving and receiving in life, significant part of who we are as people. This is last year's tap that we had in here, and it's healed over really well, except for around the bark, but the insides have healed pretty good. And then what I do is I try to tap at least get close to between 6 to 12 inches away from the hole, the tap we put in last year. So I'll probably tap right about here, a little lower and a little off. And a lot of that is related just to the health of the tree, because the tree, the inside of the tree can crack very easily. And a crack can go right up the tree and kind of damage the tree. So we want to be really careful as we do this. 5/16 bit is what we typically use. A little bit on an angle.
Again.
I did it wrong. And then you want to go in about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. And you put in the tap. And when it makes that sound, that's the sound you want to stop at, because you don't want to hit it any further and crack the tree. Then the pail fits in that way, and then a lid to protect it.
Thank you for joining us today on our journey. As always, full of gratitude for the land and for Dave and Sarina, particularly for sharing this with us today. To reflect on what I consider the importance of having an opportunity or an invitation to engage in the land of this and to make syrup. I think it's so important to know where things come from. We're so disconnected in our world, where you just buy stuff from the grocery store. To be involved in the process of seeing that first strip from the maple tree, and then pouring that syrup on your pancake, it tastes 1,000,000 times better than just buying it off the shelf. And I think, and for someone like myself that grew up in the city, and you can see how the urban spread and how much of our experience is more urban based these days. So to have this opportunity to get out into the forest, to enjoy and celebrate this time of year and the season, and to really connect with our food, and to realize how really magical and how special it all is. I think that's a real gift.
I want to also share my appreciation for this land. From my understanding, there's not a lot of Indigenous communities, urban Indigenous communities that have access to land like this. This piece of land is still in Kitchener city limits. It's a part of the urban sprawl of Kitchener, and yet we still are able to tap and boil maple syrup out in this piece of land. And be able to share what comes from this land we're able to share it to the Indigenous community around us in the city. And I think that that's really significant for us. It's not something where we're heading a couple hours away to find a sugar bush and some land to do this on. It's right here in the city, and we're able to share with the Indigenous community right here in this city. And I'm really thankful that we can do that.
Thanks so much, everyone, for coming along on this journey with us, especially in this place that is increasingly becoming very important to me. And I'm just very thankful to be able to share it with you. And maybe in the future, you'll physically be in the space. Who knows?